Greetings, fellow Earthlings, and thanks for tuning in to an episode of Storytime with Dave. Sit back and relax and prepare to hear a good tale. If you're digging what I'm doing, picking up what I'm throwing down, please do follow, share, and feel free to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. Greetings, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Dave's Storytime. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about a camping trip that I took. A camping trip gone horribly wrong. If you enjoy these stories and you would like to share a story of your own, feel free to message me on Instagram. My handle on Instagram is @AndAnotherThingWithDave. Feel free to message me and you can share your story. All right, let's get into it. So it was in the late 90s. I was living in San Francisco. A couple friends and I were hanging out. I believe it was a Sunday night. And one of us had the bright idea to go for a mountain biking trip. An overnight mountain biking trip. So we put the plan together in all of about 30 minutes. And we decided that we were going to go on an overnight camping trip on our mountain bikes. So we threw stuff together hastily. Day packs, tied a sleeping bag to it. I don't even know if any of us even had a sleeping pad. I think we might have. But, very, very meager supplies. So we load all of our bikes onto one person's car. I think I drove, actually. I had a bike rack, so we fit 3 mountain bikes on the bike rack, headed across the Golden Gate Bridge to Marin County. And we didn't really have a set destination, so we just kind of drove. And we ended up at Kent Lake, for anybody who knows Marin County or Mount Tamalpais and the Mount Tamalpais watershed. So we ended up at Kent Lake, parked the car in a parking lot. Let me backpedal a little bit. As we were heading towards the Golden Gate Bridge, heading out of San Francisco, I had the sudden epiphany that we needed some type of light. This is before the era of headlamps, and nobody had a bike light. So I pulled over at Walgreens and bought 3 cheap flashlights, D-battery flashlights, and a roll of duct tape. So at least we had something. Then we proceed across the Golden Gate Bridge, find our way to Kent Lake, park at the bottom in the parking lot, which, by the time we got there, it was dark out. So if it was daylight, we would have seen that there was only parking during the day. So we're parking. It starts off, we're parking in an area where there's no overnight parking, right? But once again, we can't see the signs because it's dark out. And then we start pushing our bikes uphill because this is on Mount Tamalpais, right? This is where mountain bikes were created. Downhill mountain bikes were created on Mount Tam because there's so many wonderful trails and a lot of downhill. So as it works, when you're dealing with a mountain, you've got to get up the mountain to get down the other side. So for the first 2 hours or something, I think initially we were able to ride, and then we ended up just doing nothing but pushing our bikes up a mountain for about 2.5 hours. Then we finally get to a peak, and the fire road starts to go down the other way, right? And this is all fun and games until it's not, right? So we duct tape the flashlights onto the handlebars of our bicycles. But the drag about that is that when you turn the handlebars, the light turns with it, right? So we're gaining a lot of speed going down this pretty steep fire road. And as we're sliding out around the turn, our handlebars are pointed way off to the right, but we're going straight, sliding out around these turns. So we're completely unable to see where we're heading. So, so we needed to go much slower than we were going, right? So no more racing. Had to reel it in a little bit. Then I decide, oh, well, this isn't fun going slow, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. I'm going around this one turn, and I just had this premonition that I was getting near the edge. I couldn't see the edge of the fire road, but I felt as if I was near a drop-off. So I go to put my outside foot down, and there's no ground there. So at that moment, I just left my bike, jumped off my bike, and leapt for the trail. And sure enough, I was about to go off the edge of a pretty steep 45-degree incline into the brush. So I jump off my bike to the fire road, to the center of the road, and I slide almost all the way off of the fire road. And my bike is doing, somersaults down this 45-degree incline into the brush, and I can just see the flashlight spinning, doing loops, So close call. I nearly went off the road at like 25 miles an hour in the pitch black. So my bike comes to rest against a tree way down there. Can see the flashlight pointing up in the air. So one of my friends cuts his flashlight off of his bike and walks me down there so I can get my bike. Then we come back up, and and then we decide, okay, so no more speed runs. We're going to just take it easy. Got to be much more careful. Don't want anybody to get really hurt out here because it would be a long ways back, right? And we're thinking, the other two people would have to carry the injured person. So basically my two more sensible friends were telling me, Dave, rein it in. Don't want to be carrying you. Don't want to have to pack you out of here. So I was like, okay, all right. And so we proceed down slowly at a meager pace for about another 2 hours or something, right? And there's no moon, so it's just really pitch black, tons of stars out. And we had brought a cooking pot and some water and some pasta and a really nice bottle of wine and some pasta sauce. So we made a nice pasta dinner, had a bottle of wine, talked about the fun we were having, and then we proceeded to go to bed. I'm going to pause this for just a moment. So we finish our nice pasta dinner, our $25, $30 bottle of wine, telling stories about how fun it was, and oh my God, dude, I thought I was going to go off the road. And we all had our stories about, our journey thus far, arriving where we had arrived, which was, and we're just camping, we're just sleeping on the fire road, right? We just decided, okay, this is far enough for the first night, and we thought we were going to go home the next day, right? So we're camping out, thinking we're going to ride back to the car the next day. Well, we wake up in the morning, and fatal decision. Well, not fatal decision, but wrong decision. We decide to keep going as opposed to going back the way we came. And I'll just tell anybody that's going to go out into the woods, always go back the way you came. So we didn't do that. We continued down the fire road. And then I had the bright idea to go off-road. So I jump off the trail to the left. There's a fire road meandering down. I just jump off the shoulder to the left and start going through the bushes, like, follow me. I don't know what I figured. I figured I'd race to the bottom and we would see what's at the bottom. Well, I got to the bottom all right. And it took a while, probably 20 minutes or a half hour of intense downhill. It was a blast. But When we arrived at the bottom, we reached Kent Lake at the bottom of this bushwhacking expedition. Now, we were in the middle of a drought, multi-year drought, but right before the drought, there had been 3 or 4 wet years in a row. So the lake level had risen, killed all the trees, around the lake about 10 feet high. Up, the lake level had risen about 10 feet, killing all the trees surrounding the lake. Then when the lake receded again and we entered another drought, all those trees fell down towards the lake. So we get to the lake level, and it's literally covered with 4 feet high of dead timber, completely surrounding the lake. So, and this lake was, there's no like nice beaches or anything like that. It's actually drinking water, so you're not allowed to swim in it. And, it's the county's drinking water reservoir. So we end up trying to make progress around the lake, but like I said, it's 4 feet high of dead trees. So we're having to throw our mountain bikes up over a pile of logs, then climb up that pile of logs, down the other side, then throw the mountain bike again, and repeat. It took us 4 hours to go about a quarter of a mile around this lake. At that point, we realize, the sun's starting to go down. We realize we're not going to make it back. We're out of water. We don't have any more food. I think we had a little bit more food. I had a peach, and one of my friends had a Cliff Bar. So those two guys split a Cliff Bar, and I ate a peach. And that's all the food we had the second day. So then luckily we had this pot that I brought for the pasta dinner the first night. So I took that, filled it with lake water. We made a fire and boiled a bunch of water, so we had sterile drinking water. We all filled our water bottles. And then we decided to crash out and get an early start the next day. Well, the next day, we try, going around the lake again. We realize we're not going to make any headway going around the lake because, climbing over this dead timber was so time consuming. So I had the bright idea to make a raft out of dead trees and the duct tape that we had. So we gathered a bunch of dead trees together, small, probably 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And we made like a Robinson Crusoe raft, right? And duct taped that thing together, put our bikes on it, our mountain bikes. We all had $1,000+ mountain bikes, right? So we throw our mountain bikes in the center of this raft, and then we're just holding, in the water, holding onto the raft, kicking to propel it forward, right? Well, come to find out, as soon as we get in the water, my one friend Kurt can't swim. So he's freaking out all of a sudden, and I'm like, dude, just don't look down. Just look at your bike. Just look to the other shore. And he's just white as a ghost, right? Because this water's green and murky, and the lake's probably 100 feet deep in the middle, and we're going directly across it, right? So he's freaking out, and he wasn't kicking much. He was basically just frozen. So my friend Brad and I are doing all the kicking to get us across to the other shore. We make it across. It's probably half a mile across. So brutal exercise, right? We were all in our 20s in really good shape, but brutal exercise, kicking this raft all the way across. So we get across. The raft is starting to sink by this time, so thank God we made it. And then I forget what happened, but we each sat out and set out to scout different areas to see if we could find a trail, right? Nobody could find a trail. So then we're going, okay, maybe there's no trail on this side of the lake. We got to get back to the other side of the lake. So we're doing like a zigzag pattern down the lake, right? We went diagonally across the lake, we're trying to get to the south end of the lake, basically, right? So the first time we went diagonally across the lake to the left, landed on the shore there. Now we're going diagonally across the lake to the right, trying to get back down to the far end of the lake. It's a long, skinny lake. So we make a second raft out of dead trees and duct tape. Once again, throw our bikes on top of that, start paddling across the lake, and we make it to the other shore. Same thing, right as the raft is starting to get waterlogged and sink, we make it ashore. You know, our bikes are getting a little bit wet, but they didn't sink, thank God. So we did the same thing. We split out and we all went looking for a trail. And my friend Brad found a fire road. Thank God. So this is 2.5 days in on what was supposed to be an overnight mountain biking trip. Brad came back. The two of us came back way sooner. Brad came back about 45 minutes after us, and he had found a fire road. So we had to hike directly straight up through the bush for about, I'd say, 2 miles. And then we encountered a fire road. And that fire road led us back to our car. We get back to the car, and there happened to be a park ranger there at the car waiting for us. And he had written out 3 tickets, or he had written out 1 ticket for $1,200 or something for all the violations, right? So parking overnight, there's no parking. No going off, no staying in the park area overnight, no camping, there's another ticket. No going off trail, there's a ticket. And no swimming in the reservoir, there's another ticket. So he could have given us each 4 $300 tickets, but he saw our condition and just took total sympathy for us. You know, he's like, you guys are lucky to have made it back. We look like hell. We all had horizontal scratches covering our entire bodies where we'd been, from bushwhacking. And, at first we're pushing the branches away, but, by day 2, we're just tromping straight through, not caring that it's scratching you. Just wanting to get out of there. So we load up the bikes in the car and head back to the city. And all of us were talking about, like, what do you want? What's the first thing you want from civilization? And it's funny, we all had our special things that we were craving after so long with no food and expending so much energy. And for me, it was a Snickers bar. So we found the nearest 7-Eleven, and I forget what the other 2 guys were craving, what their desired object was, but I got my Snickers bar, and it was the best Snickers bar I've ever eaten in my life. Yeah, so that was the result of having a spontaneous idea to do an off-road mountain biking trip. So I would not suggest it. If you're going to do an overnight trip, plan ahead, get maps, have supplies. Oh, another thing. The reason the ranger was there at the car waiting for us, giving us a ticket, was because we had all not shown up to important engagements, right? We were supposed to be back a day ahead of this, day and a half. So one of my friends missed an important business meeting. One of my friends was supposed to pick his sister up at the airport, and I was supposed to be at work. So, they were like, oh, wait, didn't those 3 guys go mountain biking? Yeah, huh. And Brad's not at the meeting. Didn't he go mountain biking with Dave? Uh-oh. And wasn't, Kurt's sister doesn't get picked up at the airport. And so I think she called his friend Mark, who was a mutual friend, and he's like, yeah, I think he was going mountain biking with a mutual friend, Dave. So then I'm the common denominator, right? So then they call my work, and I didn't show up for work. So now they're starting to worry. So they called the park ranger, and all they knew is that we went to Mount Tam to go mountain biking. So the rangers had flown around in a helicopter. Oh, I forgot part. They'd flown around in a helicopter and finally found my car, and then ran the plates, found out it was my car, and that's why they were there. But I forgot one important part. The second night, when we were camping out, we decided to make a fire, because that way there's no fires in this area, right? No camping, no fires, no nothing. So I figured that way we would get busted, but by getting busted, we would get saved, rescued. So we made 2 huge campfires, right? And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. A plane's going to go over. They're going to see the campfire. They're going to see all the smoke. They'll call it in. We'll be rescued. Well, we got these 2 nice fires going, right? But the fog started coming in, and a plane did fly over, but they must have thought that the smoke was fog, because we didn't get rescued. So that was so disappointing. It's like those those movies where somebody's deserted on an island or something, and they see a ship go by and they're waving, but the ship doesn't see them. It was that same sensation. This plane's flying over. We got these 2 raging fires going. I'm like, they have to see this. They have to see us. Sure enough, if they did see us, they didn't report us. So that could have been our savior right there. But oh no, we had a different fate in store. Definitely. It ended up being way more character building than it would have been if we got rescued at that moment. Although if they had to fly in a helicopter to rescue us, I'm sure we would have gotten ticketed and had to pay for the helicopter. But I'm sure all 3 of us would have gladly forked out that money, not knowing that we would have made it to safety within 24 hours. But it got to be pretty harrowing, being completely lost. And the clincher was that we knew over the next hill, the Golden Gate Bridge was like 20 miles that way, 15 maybe, as the crow flies. And we're like, oh my God, if we could just make it to that peak right over there, we know home is right that way. But because of all the dead trees surrounding the lake, it was just really hard to make any progress. So, moral of that story, don't go off the trail. Definitely purchase a map of the area and study it before you go there. And bring extra food. Definitely bring extra food. Yeah. So hope you enjoyed that tale. I will be sharing many more, but that was an arduous, gut-wrenching, fear-inducing time. So close to home. So close to home. Things went so wrong. So be careful out there. If you're camping, hiking, biking, be careful out there. Always tell people where you're going. And like I said, always bring a map. Know your surroundings. Always bring a water container, water sterilization kit. Because you never know. And Cliff Bars are your friend. They're small. Bring extras. You never know. You might need them. But thanks for tuning in to an episode of Dave's Story Time. I think this is episode number 6. And if you would like to submit an episode, tell your story, please hit me up with a direct message on Instagram. My handle on Instagram is @AndAnotherThingWithDave. If you'd like to check out my other podcast, I do a political podcast called And Another Thing with Dave, available on all podcast platforms. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in, people. right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Storytime with Dave. We will see you next time. And if you're interested in contributing and telling your story on the podcast, shoot me a direct message over on Instagram and Another Thing with Dave on Instagram.